Well, question. What is the greatest miracle in the Bible? It's not the resurrection. Yes, the greatest miracle in the Bible is the first verse, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If that verse is true, every other verse is believable, right? I mean, if it's true that God created the heavens and the earth out of nothing, can he do whatever he wants that's not logically impossible inside the heavens and the earth? Can he do Jonah and Jesus and Noah and part the Red Sea? Can he do that if he can create the whole universe out of nothing? That's easy for God to create the whole universe out of nothing. Now, here's the interesting point. The point is we have scientific evidence and philosophical evidence. The first verse of the Bible is indeed true. The greatest miracle in the Bible has already occurred. So to say that future miracles after the first one haven't occurred is unreasonable. Let's start here at point one, the cosmological argument. And this is the argument that many say points back to the big... Now, some of you are going, Frank, we're Christians from Oklahoma. We don't believe in the Big Bang. You guys don't believe in the Big Bang? I believe in the Big Bang. I just know who banged it. In fact, the evidence for the Big Bang is indeed quite good. You even have atheistic scientists admitting this. For example, Stephen Hawking, an atheistic scientist, says almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. Now, Hawking tries to come up with another explanation for how space, time, and matter came into existence out of nothing, but even he admits that the evidence is there that space, time, and matter had a beginning. Alexander Vilenkin, a Russian cosmologist who's an agnostic, put it this way: with the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is now no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. Now, Vilenkin believes in the multiverse. There are many universes out there, but even he admits this, that even if there are other universes out there which we can't detect, he says the whole show, all the universes together, need an absolute beginning. So he admits that there has to be a beginning to the universe. He'll try and come up with another explanation other than God, but the evidence is what he admits. Now, what is the evidence that is having these and other scientists admitting that space, time, and matter had a beginning? All this scientific evidence is in the book, chapter 3. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. I don't have time to go through the details here this morning. I'm just going to list the evidence so you'll have something to think about. And then when you get the book, it'll be much easier to go through. It's in an acronym, SURGE, S-U-R-G-E. Each letter stands for another line of evidence. The S stands for the second law of thermodynamics. The U stands for the fact that the universe is expanding. The R stands for the radiation afterglow. That's the remnant heat from the initial Big Bang explosion. It was discovered by two scientists working at Bell Labs in Homedale, New Jersey, back in 1965. They won Nobel Prizes for that. The G stands for the great galaxy seeds. Those are very fine temperature variations in the radiation afterglow that, according to the theory, allowed the galaxies to form. And E stands for Einstein's theory of general relativity, which showed beyond any reasonable doubt that space, time, and matter are correlative, that they came into existence together. It's really not controversial that the universe had a beginning. What's the controversial part is what caused the universe to have a beginning, okay? This led this man, Robert Jastrow, an agnostic astronomer, to write a book called God and the Astronomers back in the late 70s, which he updated back in 1992. He said this in his book, and on page 1 of the book he says, I'm an agnostic on religious matters, meaning, look, I don't know whether God exists or not, but here's what he writes in the book. The astronomical evidence leads to a biblical view of the origin of the world. The essential element in the astronomical and biblical accounts of Genesis is the same. He went on in an interview to say that there are what I or what anyone would call supernatural forces at work is now, I think, a scientifically proven fact. Now, why would an agnostic astronomer say it's scientifically proven that supernatural forces are at work? Why couldn't nature have created the universe? Because nature was created. Nature's the effect. Nature can't be the cause. There was no nature. There was no space, matter, or time, or more properly, space, time, or matter. There was nothing. What is nothing? Aristotle had a good definition of nothing. He said, nothing is what rocks dream about. That's nothing. No space, no matter, no time. It wasn't just Jastrow who said these kind of things. Every one of these gentlemen has won Nobel Prizes in physics. None of them are Christians. First one is Arno Penzias, who discovered the radiation afterglow. He said, the best data we have concerning the Big Bang are exactly what I would have predicted had I had nothing to go on but the 5 books of Moses, the Psalms, and the Bible as a whole. His colleague, Robert Wilson, said, certainly there was something that set it all off. I can't think of a better theory of the origin of the universe to match Genesis. George Smoot, who taught at UCal Berkeley, put it this way. He said, there is no doubt that a parallel exists between the Big Bang as an event and the Christian notion of creation from nothing. Now, if the universe had a beginning, it seems it must have had a beginner. Now, this is the scientific evidence the universe had a beginning. Let me give you a line of philosophical evidence that the universe had a beginning. Let's take a look at a timeline. Here's a timeline. Here's the present right here. And there's yesterday, there's the day before yesterday, and there's last week. And let's say we don't know how far into the past this timeline goes. First question I have for you, could this timeline be infinite into the past? The answer is no. Why? First of all, what is the definition of an infinite? Something that has no end. But here's the end of the timeline, right? You can't have a timeline, an infinite timeline that has an end to it. Also, you can't add to an infinite. Because tomorrow we're going to add another day to this timeline, and the day after that we'll add another day, and the day after that we'll add another day. You get the idea, we're adding here. Also, and this will really make you think hard, today never would have gotten here if there were an infinite number of days before today. Think about that for a minute. Why? Because you could always live another day before today got here. If there is an infinite number of days before today, you'd always have to live another day before today got here. Remember, you just can't traverse an infinite. There's always another day to live. Now that certainly can give you intellectual constipation, if you think about that long enough. But this argument, I think, is philosophically inescapable, that in effect time had a beginning. If the past were infinite, today never would have arrived. And isn't it interesting, on at least 4 occasions, Paul talks about time having a beginning. Time had a beginning. If time had a beginning, whatever caused the universe must be timeless. Now, if the universe had a beginning, it must have had a beginner. The evidence leaves us with one of the following 2 options. Either no one created something out of nothing, that's the atheistic view, or someone created something out of nothing, that is the theistic view. Now, my only question is this: which view is more reasonable? That no one created something out of nothing, or that someone created something out of nothing? I think number 2, right? I was at Texas A&M, and one atheist said, oh, no, I think number 1 is more reasonable. I said, number 1? Let's take a look at number 2 for a second. Number 2 says someone created something out of nothing. Now, that is a miracle. But at least you have a miracle worker. You've got someone. Number 1 is a miracle with no miracle worker. That's clearly absurd. I said to the audience that night at A&M, I said, to show you how seriously we all take the law of causality, and oh, by the way, the law of causality does not say everything needs a cause. The law of causality says everything that comes to be needs a cause. There has to be an uncaused first cause. Aristotle would call it the unmoved mover. There has to be something that's self-existent, that got everything in motion and sustains it in motion. That's exactly what we mean by God. But if the universe had a beginning, then it must have had a beginner. So I said to the audience that night, I said, to show you how seriously we all take the law of causality, that things don't pop into existence out of nothing and by nothing, there is nobody sitting here in this auditorium tonight who is currently worried that as you sit here, a hippopotamus has appeared out of nothing without a cause and is currently defecating on your pillow. You don't worry about that. In fact, you don't worry about a raging Bengal tiger appearing right here in this aisle and taking people out, right? Things don't pop into existence out of nothing without a cause. And if they did, why doesn't everything pop into existence out of nothing without a cause? Why don't Mercedes-Benzes and MacBook Pros pop into existence? Could have saved me a couple of grand. By the way, if you're hungry for a pizza, does it make sense to order one or just sit around, wait, and hope? Talk about faith. It's the atheists that have to have all the faith, all the unreasonable faith. So the only question is, which view is more reasonable? Now, you say, well, how do atheists respond to this? Poorly. You know what atheists try and do? They try and just say we're one of many universes out there, And we just happen to look like we were created and designed. And so they come up with what's called the multiverse theory. And in fact, this was graphically illustrated quite beautifully by National Geographic a number of years ago. Here is their rendition of the multi-universe theory. Self-generating universes, multiple universes grow like branches from a tree trunk in a model that allows the universe to create itself. Hello, McFly. Can you create yourself? No, you can't create yourself. You have to exist prior to creating anything. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to let some graphic artist down at National Geographic draw some sort of demented French horn to get me to believe that's how we got here. One scientist very early on in the article said, it's sort of like we're brushing our ignorance under the rug of the very early universe. He's absolutely right. Look, if space, matter, and time had a beginning, the cause can't be made of space, matter, and time. The cause must be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. Also powerful to create the universe out of nothing. Also intelligent, as we'll see here in a minute, because he did it with extreme precision. Also personal, to decide to create. So when you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, intelligent, personal cause, who do you think of? God. That's what we mean by God. As Aquinas would say, that's what all men know to be God. This was not lost on Robert Jastrow, again, the agnostic astronomer who wrote the book God and the Astronomers. Again, agnostic, doesn't know whether God exists or not, but he goes through all the evidence for the beginning of the universe. And this is how he ends the book. This is the last line in the book. He says, for the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He's about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he's greeted by a band of theologians who've been sitting there for centuries. No doubt reading Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, can anyone give me any good reason why we ought not be teaching this surge evidence in our government school system, in our public schools? Did I say anything about the reason we believe this is true is because the Bible says so? No, I'm simply saying it's congruent with the Bible. It agrees with the Bible. But you don't need the Bible to know it. This is just evidence. That's all it is. Let the kids decide what they do with the Creator, if there is a Creator. In fact, our founding document says what? We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men were created and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Well, we can't teach that in the government school system anymore? Is the Declaration of Independence unconstitutional? In fact, what do you think Thomas Jefferson would do, who wrote the Declaration of Independence? What do you think he would do if he were to come back today? Remember, he's the man who said taxation without representation is tyranny. What do you think he would do today if he were to come back and say and see that his tax dollars were going to pay public school teachers to teach his kids that his Declaration of Independence was in effect unconstitutional? I think he'd start the Second American Revolution. What are you talking about? That's how far we've fallen. By the way, do you want to know whose fault that is? It's the church's fault. We haven't been the church for the past 100 years. We're too worried to say anything about anything. We're too worried to stand up and defend anything. Somebody may call us a name. We can't have that. You'll see why this afternoon. Greg is going to show you some great ways to deal with name calling. You simply say, I know what you are, but what am I? No, He's got more sophisticated tactics than that. You'll see, all right? All right, so the point here is that there was a beginning to the universe, and we'll see later a sustaining cause exists right now. Let's now take a look at the teleological argument. This is the design of the universe and also the design of life. We'll start with the design of the universe, and this is sometimes called the fine-tuning of the universe. The question is, what explains fine-tuning? Is it design or something else? And what do we mean by the fine-tuning of the universe? The universe, aspects of the universe, certain constants in the laws of nature and the laws of nature themselves are so supremely fine-tuned that if you were to change any one of these factors just slightly, certainly there'd be no life here on Earth, and there might not even be galaxies. There might be nothing more than helium or hydrogen in the universe. There might not be anything because the universe may have collapsed back on itself. In fact, this is exactly what Stephen Hawking says. Again, an atheist puts it this way. He says, if the expansion rate of the universe was different by 1 part in 1,000 million a second after the Big Bang, the universe would have collapsed back on itself or never developed galaxies. In other words, if you were to change the expansion rate, that infinitesimal amount, at the very beginning of the universe, we wouldn't be here. The same thing is true with our current expansion rate, sometimes called the cosmological constant. That is fine-tuned, apparently, to 1 in 10 to the 20 precision, which is an incomprehensible number. The gravitational force is fine-tuned to 1 in 10 to the 40. If it were altered by more than that, we wouldn't be here. What's 1 in 10 to the 40? Well, you know how numbers work with these exponents on them, this scientific notation, 10 to the 40. That means 1 part in 1 with 40 zeros following it. In fact, let me just give you an illustration of this. The common dating of the universe, the scientific dating says the universe is 13.8 billion years old. We can talk about the age of the Earth later during the Q&A if you want. But let's just take that dating. What is 13.8 billion years old? It's 10 to the 18 seconds. Okay, what's the difference between 10 to the 18 seconds and 10 to the 19 seconds? How much bigger is 10 to the 19 than 10 to the 18? Yeah, 1 0 means it's 10 times bigger. You're adding a 0. This is 10 to the 40. You go, Frank, I can't get my head around that number. I know, let me give you an illustration. Take a tape measure and stretch it across the entire known universe. That's a long way, by the way. Set the gravitational force at a particular inch mark on that tape measure. I know gravity's not measured in inches. This is just to give you a scale idea in your mind. If you were to move the strength of gravity 1 inch in either direction, we wouldn't be here. That's 1 in 10 to the 40 precision. There's only 3 possible explanations for that value being right where it is. One is physical necessity. It had to be there. No, it didn't have to be there. It could have been here, it could have been here, it could have been 1 million miles that way. The second is chance. I don't have enough faith to believe it just happened to arrive there by chance, whatever that is. You notice that chance is not a cause, by the way. Chance is a word we use to describe mathematical possibilities. There's not a force out there known as chance. So when scientists begin to use the word chance, what they really mean is, we don't know. The third possibility after physical necessity and chance is design. Somebody designed it to be right there. It seems to me that's the best explanation. In fact, again, this man, Arno Penzi, is not a Christian. Actually, I think he renewed his Jewish faith after discovering the radiation afterglow, the R insurge, the remnant heat from the initial Big Bang explosion. He put it this way. He said, astronomy leads us to a unique event, a universe which was created out of nothing, one with the very delicate balance needed to provide exactly the right conditions required to permit life, and one which has an underlying, one might say, supernatural plan. It's not just these constants about the universe that appear to be fine-tuned. Our solar system appears to be designed with us in mind. For example, where are we in the solar system? Right there, third rock from the sun. If we were just a little bit closer to or a little bit further away, we wouldn't be here. A little bit closer to, we'd burn up. A little bit further away, we'd freeze. We are what scientists call the Goldilocks zone. It is not too hot. It is not too cold. It is the axial tilt, 23.5 degrees. Change that slightly, we don't exist. Earth rotation, 24 hours. Change that slightly, we don't exist. The size and distance of the moon from us, change that slightly, we don't exist. Oxygen is 21% in the atmosphere. If it were 15%, we'd all suffocate. If it were 25%, spontaneous fires would break out. If Jupiter was not in its current orbit, we wouldn't be here. Why? What does Jupiter do for us? Go ahead. What does it do? You are absolutely right. Give that young man a hand. Man, he's getting excited about Jupiter, isn't he? All right. You're absolutely right. That's what Jupiter does. Jupiter's gravitational force is so strong that it attracts many of the meteors and space junk to it rather than us. In fact, if you take a close-up look at Jupiter, you see what those purple marks are? Those purple marks are comet fragment strikes that are bigger than the Earth. Thank God for Jupiter. Because if Jupiter wasn't there, we wouldn't be here. In fact, I saw a headline on the Drudge Report about a year ago, and every time I read the Drudge Report, I think the world is ending. Anyway, it said this: scientists believe major meteor to hit Earth in 2040. I am rooting for Jupiter. You want to get the size of Jupiter? Check this out. Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Earth. Look at poor Pluto down here. You know, Pluto recently has been demoted as a planet. I don't know about you, but I think it's size discrimination. Take a look at this. You can hardly see Pluto. Take a look at this. That's Arcturus. That's another star in our galaxy. Here's the sun. Jupiter is 1 pixel in size on this scale. Earth is invisible. Pluto, forget about it. Now take a look at, you got Arcturus here? Okay, keep an eye on Arcturus. Where's Arcturus now? There's Arcturus to the left of the white star Rigel. That's Antares. That's another star in our galaxy. That's not outside our galaxy. That's in our galaxy. The sun is 1 pixel in size on this scale. Jupiter is invisible. Earth, Pluto, forget about them. The heavens are awesome. In fact, if the Earth was the size of a golf ball, Beetlejuice here would be 5 or 6 Empire State Buildings high. Think about that. That's just in our galaxy. All the distance, or the average distance between stars in our galaxy is 30 trillion miles. All that distance is necessary for us to exist here on Earth. If it were much different, gravitational forces would cause us not to be able to stay in orbit, and therefore we couldn't live. Now, 30 trillion miles, how far is that? Far. Take you at least 2 tanks of gas in a Toyota Prius to go 30 trillion miles. That is if the gas pedal doesn't stick. Now, I was out at the Desert Museum in Tucson, Arizona a number of years ago. You guys ever been out in the Desert Museum? It's outside of Tucson a little ways. And so if you're out there at night, there's no city lights, and if it's a clear night, you can see thousands of stars in the sky. And one night we're out there, and the guide said, hey, it's so clear tonight, if we look up at 9:03, we're going to see the space shuttle in orbit. I said, oh, come on, we're not going to see the space shuttle in orbit. It's only 120 feet long. It's 350 miles up. We're not going to see it. Oh, me of little faith. At 9:03, the guy goes, look! And we look up in the sky, about 70 degrees above the horizon, there's an object streaking out of the west relative to us about like this. I mean, it's really cooking. When it got right about here, it disappeared. I don't know whether Scotty beamed it up or what. But it was just cruising across the sky, and then suddenly it was gone. Well, actually, what happened was, despite the fact that we were in total darkness, the space shuttle was so high up, the sun was still reflecting off it so we could see it. As soon as it got out of the range of the sun, we couldn't see it anymore. Now, when the space shuttle is in orbit, the space shuttle is traveling at about 18,000 miles an hour. That's 5 miles per second. You got trouble getting to work in the morning? Take the space shuttle. You'll be there. Think about that. 5 miles a second. Now, I did a little calculation to try and figure out how long would it take us if we could get in the space shuttle and go from our star, the sun, to another star in our galaxy, an average distance away, 30 trillion miles. In other words, if we could go 5 miles a second, how long would it take us to go 30 trillion miles? How long do you think it would take us? A long time. That's a good answer, sir. It would take us 201,450 years. That means if you got in the space shuttle at the time of Christ and started traveling to another star an average distance away in our galaxy, you'd be less than 1/100th of the way there right now. And we're going to explore space. No, we're not. We're not going anywhere in space. Who'd like to go to the next nearest star? We'll go. Get in, kids. Are we almost there yet, Dad? Another 200,000 years. Play some more Xbox. No. Forget about it. It's not going to happen. In fact, you see this? This picture right here is from the ground. You see that little square right there? That's this square from the Hubble Space Telescope. Those are galaxies, heavenly bodies, stars. The heavens are awesome. How many stars are out there? Estimate about equivalent to the number of grains of sand on all the beaches on all the earth. And to go from one star to another star, going 5 miles a second, will take you over 200,000 years. You want to know who God is like? Most Christians have the wrong idea of who God is like. We think God is a big angel. No, God is not a big angel. You want to know who God is like? Meditate on the attributes of God. A spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, moral, personal, intelligent, sustaining, personal cause. Then remove all limits from your mind. That's God. Why is there a second commandment? Thou shalt make no graven image. At least one reason why is there a second commandment. Because any image you make of an infinite being necessarily limits his majesty. You can't draw a picture of infinity. Everything we know in our experience here on earth is limited. It's finite. God is unlimited, infinite. If he's an ounce of any attribute, he's infinite in that attribute. If he's an ounce of love, infinite love. Ounce of justice, infinite justice. Ounce of power, infinite power. He is the standard by which everything else is measured. Psalm 103 verse 11 says, God's love to those that fear him exceeds the height of the heavens above the earth. How high are the heavens above the earth? Stars equivalent to grains of sand on all the beaches on all the earth. 200,000 years at 5 miles a second between those stars. From our perspective, infinite. Even though that's still finite, that's still limited. That's why the Bible says the heavens declare the glory of God. Look to the heavens. If you want to have an idea of an infinite being, look to the heavens, and even the heavens are finite.